Um, so we are going to have three speakers joining us today. I'm going to turn it over to, we're going to have three speakers joining us today. That's going to be Nkechi Elechi. She's our policy director. Viviana Westbrook, who is a legal advocate and attorney who works in immigration, and also April Holloway. Again, if you're familiar with Nigerian Center, you might have had a consultation with her here on Thursdays. So we have a policy director and two wonderful attorneys who are going to be lending us their expertise throughout this process. This is just an agenda rundown of what's going on here today. I'm going to hand it over to my director momentarily. And as I said, Nkechi will be joining us first, then Viviana, then April. And finally, at the end, we definitely want to hear from you all of our participants. We want to know what's going on in your lives and hear about any questions. All right, so right as we get started, I am looking at this chat box and I would love to know who is in the house, who is with us. We had several dozen people sign up, so I want to know where everybody is coming from. I am from Maryland, spending a lot of time in DC, but if you want to really quickly just type in the chat box, let us know where you're coming from, where you're tuning in from. Okay, they're coming in. So Alexandria, Prince George's County. Oh, wow. Okay, all the way in New York. Okay. Okay, we have a couple of ally organizations here. Thank you so much for joining us today. Okay, someone from Chicago who's in Virginia, and immigration lawyer in DC. Okay, Julia, thank you for coming in. We see Baltimore, Washington, DC, Montgomery County, Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay. Okay, so everybody from Maryland. Maryland's in the house. We're representing. All right, all the way out in California. Lombe, thank you so much for joining us. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, DC, LA County. Okay, well, that is great. I'm glad to see that we have such a huge reach. Again, we always want to reach out to as many people as possible. Okay, somebody just chimed in from Denver. Thank you so much. Um, so like I said, we have some amazing services at Nigerian Center. We offer not only assistance with tax preparation, we have language classes where folks can come in and brush up on their Yoruba, their Igbo. And of course, we have wonderful attorneys on staff that do complimentary legal consultations here on Thursdays in the Anacostia Art Center. That's Anacostia, Southeast Washington, DC. And we do webinars like this to educate the public, and we have recordings so anyone can come in and, again, learn about what we do, but also take something away that speaks to their situation. Okay, we got a few more folks coming in. Okay, give me one moment. So again, I'm going to turn this over to my director, Benga. He is going to talk a little bit more about what we do.
Excellent. I will be sharing my screen momentarily. Let's see. If you can stop sharing your screen, Morgan, that'll be wonderful so I can share mine. Everyone see my screen with the About Us?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, everyone, this is Benga Gunjini, the Executive Director of the Nigerian Center. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm going to go right into it. You have seen the video of what we do. We have an outstanding narrative shift campaign going on in Washington, D.C. The best word that can describe this campaign is prophetic, because we actually did this before the occupation in Washington, D.C. A few days prior. So I'm going to play the trailer of our Washington, D.C. campaign to further introduce us to our work at the Nigerian Center. Give me 1 second, and the video is going to come up.
We have an opportunity to make America even more prosperous, and immigrants are the catalyst and the conduit for those prosperities.
My name is Ayomide Ibrahim, and I am a face of Washington's prosperity.
I'm Dr. Gina Page, and I am the face of Washington's prosperity.
I am Easy Okwodu, and I am the face of Washington's prosperity.
I am Ifeoma Cleopatra Onya. I am the face of Washington's prosperity.
My name is Tony. I am the face of Washington's prosperity.
I am Benga Ogunjimi, and I am the face of Washington's prosperity.
The message is this: we're all the same. As long as we're all in this world together, created by the same God, we're all here together.
And so rather than looking at immigrants as others, we need to look at immigrants as family, as neighbors, as those who are contributing to the health and the prosperity of Washington, D.C.
There's a reason why we call it the United States of America, meaning we all come from a different part of the world, come united to make America great.
My biggest triumph is being immigrants. I get a lot of inspiration from my community, and I use that to motivate myself.
The greatest challenge as an immigrant is knowing the right place to find that resources that you need, which is why I truly appreciate what Nigerian Center is doing, creating that map, providing those resources for you as an immigrant the moment you step into this country.
Start by supporting immigrant-owned businesses in your community. Consider donating to an organization serving immigrant families, and contact your elected officials to support policies that protect immigrants. For more information, visit www.nigeriancenter.org/prosperity.
Okay, we can go to the next slide now. Okay, I want to talk about our upcoming events that we have. The first event I want to highlight is our financial education series with TD Bank. It's a 3-part series starting September 16, all through November 19. If you're in the Washington, D.C. area, please go to our website to RSVP and register to attend these classes. We are also going to be talking about our micro loan program that provides financial capital for folks to start businesses and those who may need credit building to be able to build credit or establish credit for the very first time. Our in-person and virtual immigration legal center is still running and will continue to run. If you need legal assistance in the Washington, D.C. area, you can walk into the Nigerian Center any Thursday to get help. If you are not able to come in, you have access to an attorney virtually all through the week. There is a small fee to be able to do that if you're not able to walk in person, but we're able to provide you the support that you need. I want to highlight that we still have the Community Immigration Defense Fund, and this was initially created for the members of the Nigerian immigrant community, but is now open to pretty much anyone who needs assistance. They cannot afford to make a fee to speak to an attorney. We will completely waive the fee for you. All you just have to do is ask, and we can provide you the link to complete a waiver form. We may ask you for some residency information, but the purpose of this fund is to remove financial barrier to those who may need legal assistance at this time. And it's a coalition of Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee, as well as their foundation and the Nigerian American Lawyers Association and the Nigerian Center. The donations is made by members of the community And you can also donate towards this fund to support those women in need immigration assistance. How can you get involved in what you do? In what we do, volunteer opportunities at Nigerian Center/serve. You can see the list of the volunteer opportunities that we have. We are seeing increase in non-major Nigerian languages like Yoruba, Isoko, translation, and interpretation services. So if you're a native speaker of any Nigerian language, or you want to be a language assistance at our program, please reach out to us. We have tax program, legal program, several programs on our website that you can volunteer. Our community partners, if you want to join us to really help extend the work that we do to your community, is a very short form to complete. It's Nigerian Center/community partners. If you're not yet connected with us on the social media pages, we are active on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. Please connect to us with us on this platform. We run major Know Your Rights campaigns on our social media platform. One of them is called Community to Congress, and our policy director provides periodic updates on several immigration policy. As you know, this policy are constantly changing, and the goalpost has been removed all the time. So it is critical that folks stay involved, and we use our social media pages to help educate our community. So please connect with us if you're not yet connected yet. If you're not a donor to the Nigerian Center, please consider doing that. Becoming a recurring donor of any amount is the best way to support the Nigerian Center. And please do not think about donation will require a lot of money. Every donation that we give to the Nigerian Center counts, and they help us to do this critical work. Quickly, I want to highlight two specific donation opportunities that you might also consider. If you have an account with TD Bank, and you can let the bank know, they will make a donation on your behalf to the Nigerian Center at no cost to you. If you do not have a bank account and you want to open one, while you're opening one, let the bank know that you want them to list Nigerian Center as the organization you want to support. They would make a donation to you. The program is the TD Bank Affinity Program, and the code that you will provide to them is on the screen. It is AJ486. And as I said, a donation will be made to you at no cost to you at all. This is open to both existing and new clients of the TD Bank. Another opportunity is the Walmart Roundup. If you shop on walmart.com, you can also designate Nigeria to round up your transaction online, and Walmart will make a donation to the Nigerian Center on your behalf. So these are a few ways in which you can support the Nigerian Center. That said, I'm going to turn it over back to you, Morgan. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight.
Thank you, Benga. I'm just gonna take control. Give me one moment. All right. This is just a quick reminder again, if any of you are unfamiliar, our services are currently being provided at the Anacostia Arts Center, and we have a free walk-in immigration clinic every Thursday from 12:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Our wonderful attorney, April Holloway, who you'll hear from later on in the event, she does complimentary consultations for us each Thursday. It's totally free to walk in. If you do need a virtual consultation, because I know we have folks coming from all over the US. If you do need a virtual consultation, you can sign up online for virtual consultations. There is a fee associated, but that's so we can compensate people for their time. But definitely, we would love to see you all come in and learn. We also work with, we also have a community immigration defense fund. And again, this is another way to get involved. If you want to schedule that virtual consultation, please do give us a call at this number, or you can go straight to our website and schedule virtual consultation. And with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Nkechi. Again, this is our wonderful policy director, and she's going to talk to us about some of the recent changes. Nkechi?
Yes, thank you so much, Morgan, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And as Morgan and Benga said, I'm also going to mirror. We at the Nigerian Center are here to keep our community informed and updated on most recent immigration policy. There is a lot going on, and I'm here to just keep everyone updated. Please, if you are not, follow us on Instagram. That is at the Nigerian Center. On Instagram, where we are constantly keeping our ears and our eyes glued to the news and new updates. And that is where you can get the latest updates. And of course, you can always call the Nigerian Center hotline if you have any questions. So I'm going to begin talking about the current takeover in DC and what you would do if you encounter ICE. And now this information, yes, is in particular for DC. However, I believe that across the United States, if you encounter ICE, you should follow the same steps that I'm going to share. And so President Trump, of course, has federalized DC's Metropolitan Police under Section 740 of the Home Rule Act, and he deployed 800 National Guard troops, and that's meaning 100 to 200 are expected to be on the streets and have been on the streets at any given time in support roles such as logistics, perimeter security, and presence near monuments here in DC. They are not at these points for any direct law enforcement action. And so this takeover is scheduled to take over for the next 30 days. And so in the event that you encounter National Guard, ICE, the first step is to know your rights and stay informed. Have an understanding that the National Guard is not there to do direct arrests or law enforcement. They are primarily there to safeguard the community or their surrounding areas. Make sure you prioritize. Number two is to prioritize your safety, but don't isolate. Avoid areas where there are protests. There are a lot of protests going on, where there are large gatherings, or even near federal buildings or the mall. Just kind of stay clear, stay safe, and stay clear. You can continue to access clinics, churches, and things of that nature. They are definitely still open and safe for you to visit. Connect with your local support organizations like the Nigerian Center. You can, call our hotline, which I will share that number at the end of my presentation. It is the Nigerian Center where you can come and speak with our immigration attorney and get legal aid, social services across the DMV. And if you do live outside of the DMV area, you can schedule an appointment to meet with our immigration attorney virtually. So everyone has an opportunity to speak with an attorney. In the event that you encounter ICE personnel or National Guard, document your encounter and report anything that you encounter to an organization like the Nigerian Center, to any of our immigration attorneys, and they can give you the next steps on what you should do. Always keep emergency contacts ready. Prepare a list of numbers or emergency numbers, whether it be family members, Nigerian Center hotline. Have those programmed in your phone in the event that you encounter ICE or any National Guard or law enforcement personnel. And always plan ahead. If you're worried about disruptions or uncertainty, stay calm. Look for safe routes for your daily travels. Make sure that you have any backup for childcare or work arrangements. And Yes. So I'm going to give the Nigerian Center hotline, and I'm sure at the end of everyone's presentation, this can be given. It is 1-800-395-9272. In the event that you have any questions that I may not cover, or for whatever reason, any of our immigration attorneys don't cover, please feel free to call that hotline with any questions that you may have. Um, Particularly in DC, there has been, as of this month of August 2025, police have been granted, unfortunately, leeway to coordinate with ICE in certain situations. So that means that DC police can notify ICE about individuals they encounter, even if the person is not under arrest. This unfortunately marks a significant change from previous sanctuary policies. So this can include traffic stops. We've seen it online where a police officer or ICE personnel stops someone on the road at a traffic stop or even at a checkpoint. And even if the arrest is for minor offenses or if you're simply crossing the street, federal and law enforcement, DC police are working alongside federal agencies like ICE, DHS, and they're more involved in like a joint operation during this National Guard presence in the city. What does that mean for immigrants in DC? It is heightened risk for deportation. So while DC has not fully ended its sanctuary status, the new policies do mean that immigrants are now at greater risk for ICE involvement. Local law enforcement, including DC police, can more easily alert ICE about individuals they suspect are undocumented, potentially leading to detentions or deportations. There are increased ICE checkpoints and street level enforcements. Immigrants may find themselves subject to increased scrutiny at checkpoints, traffic stops, or public areas where police are more likely to check for immigration status. And this information is not given to invoke fear, but as the information comes in, we do want everyone, as you go on through the day-to-day, to be well informed of what's going on. ICE is collaborating more with DC police, of course, and this could result in more immigration enforcement actions. I wanted to give a few information about driver's license and ID cards, and we are going to have more detailed information on our social media within the coming days. So some states such as DC, I know we have a few people from DC, Maryland, California, and New York. You're allowed to be undocumented and apply for a driver's license or state ID, even without lawful immigration status. In these states in particular, you do not need a social security number. However, you do need proof of identity. So you can go with your passport and proof of residency, whether that be like a utility bill, your lease, a school record, or your proof of age. And this license is just it will be labeled as not for federal identification or limited purpose. So understand that these IDs can be used for you to drive legally, identify yourself to local law enforcement, access some city services or buildings. You cannot use these IDs for boarding domestic flights or entering federal buildings or proving your lawful immigration status.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ketchy. For all our participants, can we please make sure we are on mute? If you are not the speaker, please make sure your microphone is muted. Thank you. And Ketchy, please resume. Please go ahead.
Okay, I will backtrack. So I just wanted to make clear for your IDs, understand that these IDs are strictly used for driving legally, to identify yourself to local law enforcement, and even to access some city services or buildings. This ID cannot be used for you to board domestic flights. It cannot be used for you to enter federal buildings. It cannot be used for you to prove lawful immigration status or, of course, voting in elections. If you don't have an ID, apply safely. Consider applying through immigration-friendly DMV locations. And if you have no idea what immigration-friendly DMV locations are, call the Nigerian Center. We'll do our research, we'll make some calls and give you that information. Bring a trusted friend or advocate if possible. Have your documents well organized, and do not disclose your immigration status unless required. If you are asked, for example, if you are asked social security number and you do not have one, you can typically say, I am not eligible for a social security number. And when to seek legal help, you should speak to an immigration clinic such as the Nigerian Center if you have a pending immigration case or deportation order, you are unsure about whether it's safe to apply in your state, or you are concerned about how your information will be shared. And this is a special note, of course, for people that are in DC, that reside in DC. If you are in DC and you're an undocumented resident, you can apply for the limited purpose driver's license. You do not need a lawful presence. You must be a DC resident, however, and the required documents to apply for your limited purpose driver's license is your passport, 2 documents proving your DC residency, and a signed affidavit stating you haven't been issued a social security number. And so I just wanted to give that, because a part of Know Your Rights is, let's say you're asked a question, you can pull out your ID. And if you don't have one, it is important to get one. And if you're concerned about whether you're going to an immigration clinic while you're undocumented to get the DMV while you're undocumented to get a driver's license, you can call the Nigerian Center and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have concerning places to go to get an ID, or visit your state's DMV website, MVA website, and you should be able to find information in your frequently asked questions section of the MVA website that will give you information on what you should do in the event that you're undocumented. But please feel free to call the Nigerian Center. That's why we're here. Back to DC, ICE and federal checkpoints. So in August 2025, of course, under the declared public safety emergency, the Trump administration, of course, federalized the DC police force. There are some checkpoints, and please visit our website because we will have that updated as well. Checkpoints where ICE personnel are stationed. Right now, as of most recently, I know that they're been seen on the U Street corridor on 14th Street Northwest in DC. People have been pulled over and asked about their immigration status, and they have detained individuals in unmarked vehicles. And they have noticed that there has been some ICE presence in Rock Creek Park in DC as well. So what you can do and what you know is to, of course, know your rights. If you're stopped by federal agents, you have the right to remain silent. Once invoked, if you are free to leave and refuse vehicle searches without a warrant. You can also have the right to record interactions as long as you don't interfere. Stay informed and connected, of course, again, through the Nigerian Center. We're constantly updating our information, and you do have the hotline to ask any questions that you may have. And then be very mindful of the pop-up checkpoints, especially near the National Mall and high traffic corridors like 14th Street, where ICE personnel will be. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nkechi. Thank you. If you all, as a quick point of housekeeping, everyone, please do keep your microphones on mute until we enter the Q&A. Additionally, if you have any questions for the speakers while they are speaking, please feel free to put that in the chat. Just to recap, there were a couple of phone numbers that Nkechi referenced, and thank you, Viviana, for putting those in the chat. I also put in our Instagram page and our Facebook page. That way, if you are trying to, again, find any of these resources, if you are trying to find any of these resources that you need, you're trying to get in touch with us. As Nkechi said, we are updating our social media very often. So to stay abreast of what's happening, you can go to either one of these links. All right. So thank you so much, Nkechi, for that information. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Viviana Westbrook. She is an immigration attorney.
Thank you so much. Give me 1 second while I share my screen.
No problem. I'm going to relinquish control.
Okay. Okay, so it looks like we are up and running. Oh, well, that was the first slide. So, like said, my name is Viviana Westbrook. I am the state and local advocacy attorney at Catholic Legal Immigration Network, otherwise known as Clinic. My pronouns are she, ella. Um, and there is my email address in case you all want to get in touch with me afterwards. I will say I will be sharing this PowerPoint presentation, so you will have access to these slides. So don't worry about keeping up with me. I'm going to be going fast. I'll skip over um, some of the sections, but you'll have it for later. Okay, so things to keep in mind during this part. Got to do our disclaimer. This is meant to be general education. This is not legal advice. Every person, every agency has a unique set of circumstances and should seek legal advice on their particular immigration circumstance. Also, information has been changing on a day-by-day basis. It's likely to continue changing on a day-by-day basis. So please be sure that you are using your trusted sources of information like the Nigerian Center, like Clinic, to stay informed. And finally, you want to make sure that you're looking at the specifics of your locality, county, and state to ensure that you are aware of relevant laws and policies. Okay, so first and foremost, when we're talking about knowing your rights and enforcement, remember that it's safety first, and just because you know the law doesn't mean that immigration enforcement is actually going to respect it. And I know that's really depressing and it's really scary, but that is the reality that we are currently facing. But sometimes they do respect it. And so it's really important because we have seen time and time again that there are many instances where an arrest doesn't happen, where something is stopped in their tracks because someone spoke up and said, no, I know you don't have the right to be here without a judicial warrant. And so we want people to be able to converse on this and, effectively assert their rights. But always remember, again, do it, but do it in a way that makes you comfortable. Like if you are not comfortable, like do not put your safety at risk. And also, when possible, want to be able to de-escalate. It's not fair. We shouldn't have to, but that is the situation that we are currently living in because we know that ICE enforcement is escalating often. And so we just want to, again, keep ourselves and keep others safe. Okay, so enforcement in our communities. Now, I know that we already talked a little bit about National Guard deployed, and, we've seen a whole bunch of states send folks over there. And right now, I think it's being estimated that it's costing around $1 million, which is ridiculous. And this was a video that I saw of an arrest that happened in DC, and they broke the window, grabbed the guys. There were a lot of armed agents, and some of them were holding their arms out, and they were just showing their weapons and but the people were being very loud and just chanting and saying things like ICE go home, what are you doing here? But the important part from here is that somebody in all of the kerfuffle asked, what is your name? And that is very important because sometimes people are being taken and we don't know, who they are, where they've gone. So just asking someone their name so that you can pass this information along is key. And CASA, they issued a red alert for Black, Brown, and Latina people in DC because of the military-style police presence in the streets of DC and the intensified ICE activity. In DC, like in so many other places, right, we've seen the unmarked DHS vehicles, armed ICE agents wearing face coverings, entering restaurants, outside workplaces. So it's just really important to just keep this in mind. Now, this is Maryland, and so this is a little bit about Maryland, because obviously we can't just focus on, DC without looking at Maryland or Virginia as well, since you're right there. we know that there have been a lot of pro-immigrant measures in Maryland in general. A lot of issues that we've been seeing this year are around 287G agreements, and I will be talking about those shortly. But this is just a useful thing to have. Virginia, the governor signed an executive order to force state police and Department of Corrections to sign on to 287G agreements. And that is Gilmar Abrego Garcia, that, as we know, he was detained again on Monday, and he is actually in the Farmville Detention Center in Virginia. So that's sad. And this is another photo of Gilmar. Okay, so again, talked a little bit about the voluntary National Guard deployment. We've also been seeing a targeting of states, that have sanctuary policies. The federal government came out with a list of sanctuary cities/states, and and they are withholding federal money on this. And to that fact, like I think today I read an article about how a program has to kind of shut down their representation of victims of gender-based violence because their funding has been impacted by this, and it's kind of awful. And also we know that now there's $170 billion in money for over the next 4 years for internal immigration and border enforcement. And finally, there are 896 287G agreements in the US. And at the start of this year, there were only around, I think, 146. So that is a massive increase. Okay, so now you could be like, what is 287G? So 287G basically allows local law enforcement agencies to enter into agreements and with ICE. And it's called 287G because that's the section of the law where it's laid out. And basically it's deputizing local forces to act as federal immigration agents on ICE's behalf. And two of those programs, there's three models. The first two, they only activate once someone is in a jail. But the third one is a task force model. And that one authorizes officers to basically they can act as ICE agents in the line of their duty. So that is really scary, and that is the most worrisome. Luckily in Maryland, we are not allowed to have those by law, the task force model, but we have no such restraints in Virginia. Okay, education, just really important to have education on all of this. And I put some stuff for 287G because there was a bill this year in Maryland that did not pass with the section we wanted to get rid of 287G in Maryland, like completely not let anybody else enter into an agreement, because we have 8 counties that allow it, and we do not want any more. And so this is a sample of testimony, and hopefully y'all can look at that, and maybe next year for the 2026 legislative session, vote, and show up and not vote, but show up and actually put some testimony, talk to your legislators, and tell them that this is harmful. It's harmful to communities. I worked with survivors of gender-based violence for many years, and I know how much this discourages people from going to their local law enforcement. They see it as, that they become a part of immigration. They're like, that's ICE. I don't want to go to ICE. Okay, so we know that enforcement in immigration court is happening. So that is not great. There's a coordinated effort to detain non-citizens at or near immigration courts and issue expedited removal orders. We at Clinic put together a document that has some overall information on this, so you can certainly take a look and get more details on it. But it's you really need to just remember that immigration court is different than state and local courts. It's federal, it's under the federal jurisdiction. You also want to make sure that what's happening. We've seen a lot of people, like ICE agents, just approach others in plain clothes, so you might not see them coming or know what's happening, so you might be taken unawares. You want to consider maybe filing a motion for a video or a telephone conference hearing, because then, you're not actually in court physically. Bring evidence of physical presence if in the US for over 2 years, have an emergency plan, remember your rights. Don't bring friends or family who are also at risk of removal. And this one's really important. Find an accompaniment program, because there are a bunch of accompaniment programs right now across the United States. And, these are some of the numbers where you could call, like in DC, the Migrant Solidarity Mutual Aid Hotline, and they do like the DMV in general. And so, you can get someone to accompany you for an ICE check-in, an ISAP check-in, or immigration court appointment. I actually just did their training, and it's really great. So, really recommend you reach out to them. Okay. So, encountering immigration enforcement, or what rights do immigrants have? And going kind of, so again, really important. We've seen, that there have been little hissy fits thrown about not, that people know their rights, and they're like, how dare they? And sometimes it's called like illegal or other things. It's ridiculous, but we're making an impact, right? It really is effective. And it's important to know immigrants have rights regardless of their immigration status. And I think that sometimes, folks don't know this, or they forget this, but, there are some people who are at particular risk right now. If you don't have lawful status, they have a criminal history, they are on parole, they have a prior deportation order, and if they have not lived in the US continuously for 2 years before being arrested, then they're at risk for expedited removal. Now, it's important, if there is a fear of returning to their home country, this is something that you want to make sure that immigrants are actually vocalizing, that you are saying, hey, I am afraid. This is because then, that you might get a credible fear interview, and it'll delay you being, deported expeditiously. So, know your rights. Here are some cards. We have some for clinic, but of course the ILRC has their famous red cards. So you can hand these out. They have them in a slew of different languages, and they're great because sometimes, especially in the moment, you can freeze. So you can at least hand this over to an ICE officer so they can see that you are asserting your rights. Okay, so there are rights in your home, and you can go, basically there are 2 ways that they're getting in. If they have a valid warrant, and that's like a judicial warrant, or your permission, sort of like a vampire. So you don't want to invite them in. Whatever you do, keep your door closed. Even like a slight tiny, opening just to peek out. No, they're going to take that as an invitation, and they're going to slam through, once they see that crack. So do not open it for anyone. Make sure everyone is trained for that. Always ask to see their identification. Always ask to see the warrant, like whether they have to put it under the door, up against a window, however y'all can, engineer it. Like that is definitely a way. I know some places that feel very comfortable with their landlord, for instance, if they're in an apartment, and sometimes they'll have the landlord on standby, and so the landlord will kind of get trained, and then they'll review the warrant and protect the person's right, be the first kind of block to prevent ICE from just breaking in. But always remember that no matter what, you always have the right to remain silent. Now, if officers enter your home, be sure to flag anyone who's at particular risk, like children, elderly, sick people. Make sure you say you don't consent, even if they do have a valid warrant, right? If they start searching, or just make sure you just want to assert your rights. That's the important part about rights. You have to assert them to preserve them. So if you decide you're going to stay quiet, but you don't say that you are asserting your right to stay quiet, the ICE agent might just think that you're ignoring them, right? So you want to make sure you're saying, I am exercising my right to remain silent, and then remain silent. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to where officers are searching, because sometimes they go out of the scope of the warrant. Like sometimes it's like, oh, yes, okay, great. I'm going to look over here. So you want to watch them. And, even if you don't feel comfortable calling them out at that point, but you can, I would, You can still wait until they leave and then jot everything down. But whatever you do, just make sure you're saying, I don't consent to this search. I don't consent, to you entering whatever they've done. Just make sure you're saying that you didn't consent to it. A valid search warrant, a valid arrest warrant. These are the differences. Basically, search warrant is just, and we keep saying valid. It has to be signed by a judge, justice of the peace, or magistrate. And the difference between search and arrest, basically the search warrant is for, a location or an area that's being searched. An arrest warrant is for a person. Now, here's some things about reading a warrant. It has to contain certain information, and you want to make sure that, if it's not valid, you want to be able to just say, this isn't valid. You cannot enter without a valid warrant, and so please leave. And so here are kind of the differences. They're side by side of an arrest warrant and a warrant of removal, deportation. So you notice that on the right-hand side, it says U.S. Department of Justice. And if you look down, it will have something like agent or ICE officer. And, that's not a judge. So these do not have the right for an officer to enter your home. The one on the left, on the other hand, with like a judge and, you can tell that it's valid. It doesn't say Department of, U.S. Department of Justice, Immigration. So, you want to make sure that you have someone, train yourself to be able to see some of this, but also have someone as a backup, whether if you have an attorney, accredited rep, make sure, they're on speed dial for you. And, if it turns out that you have like a friend, the landlord, whoever it is that might be able to help you, because I know not everyone is going to be able to, not everyone speaks English, not everyone reads English, so not everyone reads. So we just want to make sure that we have a backup system for these. And a little bit more about judicial warrants, ICE warrants, some of the things we've heard officers say. They're very intimidating in the point they just say like, well, do you have anything to say other than the fact that you're illegally here? And we've heard this like in this area. And, some people just kind of freeze up and they're like, well, no, I mean, I came here, and you start talking, right? Like I'm Latina, and we can be a little chatty. And so like sometimes, we get asked things and we kind of go on a tangent. This is a bad time to go on a tangent. So just be like, exercising my right to remain silent. Do not say a peep afterwards, unless you want to talk to your attorney. Then just tell them, but then go back to being silent. Okay. Street or public area, don't run away. Running gives them probable cause, to arrest you. So you don't want to give them probable cause. Be cool. And just ask, be like, am I free to go? Ask them if you're being detained. Now, they might be they don't cagey. They might not want to actually give you a direct answer if you are free to go. But what, we tell people is that you then just say, okay, well, since you are not actually responding and I believe that I am free to go, that I'm not detained, so I will be walking away. Thank you. And then just very slowly walk away. They'll let you know at that point if you're detained or not. But, and if they ask your name, so in some states you have to, you might have to give your name. I know Maryland, you don't have to give your name. This is per ACLU and CASA. So they can ask, but you don't have to answer. And again, like you can always say, I don't consent for the search. And what else? Okay, and then we have the car. I think the car was already brought up. And we have more information on this in the links. And I think that my colleague Pedro from Clinic, he posted some of our resources there. So protected areas. Okay, so very quickly, just want to say that protected areas was rescinded on January 20th. So this was protecting ICE arrests from happening, well, ICE and CBP arrests from happening in certain locations. And these were locations that were really important, like healthcare facilities, schools, places of worship, religious ceremonies, public demonstrations, domestic violence shelters, libraries, like all these places. But they rescinded that, and they have a common sense, something they call their common sense, whatever, it's directive, and it's just saying relies on people's common sense. But of course, common sense does nothing when mingled with bias and other issues. So it's very problematic. It's concerning. There are many different lawsuits on this out there. Nothing has been issued so far unless you are part of very specific churches. And if you are part of those churches, your churches have let you know. Okay, so Fourth Amendment. At the end of the day, what rights still exist, even if the protected areas policy is not in effect? So you still are free from, unreasonable searches and seizures of persons or objects. And so there's this reasonable expectation of privacy that courts have, been found or have found that is granted by the Fourth Amendment. And so this is where the need for a judicial warrant or consent to enter the non-public property comes into play. And there are some exceptions, but this is the important part that you need to know. So top lines, basically, if you have, like, if you're a church, if you're a hospital, a school, a nonprofit, and Clinic does have one-pagers on all of these, but you should know, that you should have a written policy regarding staff interactions with ICE and CBP. You want to make sure that you have a written policy that says, hey, this is a private area versus public. You want to have clear signs that show that the areas are private and which are public, so that there's no question. And you also want to make sure that you're designating a person who's going to be your contact person with ICE, right? And that you have backups to your backups to your backups, because people get sick, people go on vacation, things happen. You want to make sure you train all staff to ensure no one accidentally gives permission to immigration enforcement, because sometimes we've seen, I think in schools at one point, there was someone who they just talked to an immigration officer, and they were asked where a student was, and they're like, oh yeah, they're back there, right this way. And they were like, great, that's going in. And of course, we don't want that, especially for children. And avoid collecting immigration status when possible, because when you have it, when you have it, there's always you run the risk that if something happens, if you ever get subpoenaed, if whatever, you might have to give it up and they might see this information, right? And so you don't want something that can fall into the wrong hands. And always consult an attorney. That is really, really the key takeaway of all of these. And this is a little example of what Make the Road New York has on their door. So I really like it, and they say that just says it right there, no law enforcement officers can enter without a judicial warrant. So they make it very clear. And these are still some of the laws that exist, things like FERPA, and that schools can't ask about citizenship or immigration status. There's again, you guys will receive this, but I'm gonna power through some of the religious stuff, places of employment, just saying what I said before. And you want to make sure that people are actually planning and practicing. And these are some of best practices of taking action now, because you want to make sure that if you haven't spoken to an attorney or accredited rep this year, you should do that, because so much has changed. There's so much going on. You want to make sure you understand how it's impacting you and how you'll proceed. And so this is our emergency preparedness. We have these documents in our website, so we'll share those with you, and just some things that you should do, things you should ask yourself. You also want to make sure that your finances are taken care of, because of course there's a lot that can happen. And if you have own a home, if you have a business, you want to make sure that these things aren't going to just get lost in everything. In Maryland, there is the standby guardianship project. So if you're trying to give standby guardianship to someone in the case of being detained, you should definitely reach out to them, because they can help set that up. And standby guardianship is nice because you're not actually giving up your parental rights. You're they kind of exist at the same time. And if at any point yours and theirs conflict, like the parent will always win at the end of the day. They'll still, so this is just a good way to make sure someone has guardianship over your child if you are taken into detention. Okay, sanctuary, I've already talked a little bit about that. Harboring concerns, of course, there are some harboring concerns and there are a lot of pretextual charges that are being put against anyone who's trying to help immigrants, but it's important to know that they do exist. And if you're thinking about doing something, then, make sure that you're seeking legal advice. Okay, so these are just examples of some of the ways that Maryland has been supporting immigrants, some of different counties, guidance, University of Maryland, and this tells a little bit more about the bills that were passed, and has a copy of the Attorney General's guidance, where Maryland passed something that now we have, like schools and libraries and certain other places are designated as sensitive locations. And they're saying that, all sensitive locations have to issue guidance and have to have like a policy in place that says basically you can't come in here without a judicial warrant, which is really important because even though, we know that that is something they can do, not everyone's doing it across the states. Again, a consult an attorney or an accredited representative, depending on what you need. This is some stuff about the immigrant registration, and this is I know this is from April, so it's a little, and it's, as an attorney, I can't tell you to not register. And there are definitely significant penalties if you do not register. But if you do register, they've definitely also said that they're using it to deport people. Got information on scams and licensed practice of immigration law. And then here are some apps, some Know Your Rights for Immigrants apps. This Know Your Rights for Immigrants is great. I just saw the Human Rights First Ready Now app. So these are also really great. So you can put your emergency plans in these, and then you basically, if something happens, one click, everything's activated, and your network knows what's happened and know what the next steps are. Yeah, CASA's rate information. And this is something about best practices when recording, make sure you step back, and you want to say something like, hold it up. Don't pull anything out. You don't want to scare them, or be very cautious as you do. And then be like, I am asserting my First Amendment rights and recording this interaction. I am not interfering with the arrest, and I am standing several steps back at a safe distance. So hopefully that'll keep you pretty safe from most state laws that are a little bit weird about this. But yeah, and these are some other do's and don'ts. And use a passcode to lock your phone. Don't have biomets, because law enforcement just grabs your face, your thumb, whatever it is, and unlocks your phone. And have a whole list of resources about these different areas that you can check out. And this is some stuff about media engagement if you're interested in writing an op-ed or getting involved. So that is pretty much it. So thank you so much, and I will turn it over.
Viviana, for all that information. Again, I know we're going to be disseminating information through the chat box. And so if you do have any questions or something you needed to hear again, or something you want to look into, definitely drop it in the chat. I am watching it. Let me know. Now on to April. I'm going to hand the floor over to you. April, I think you're still on mute. Let's see if we can.
All right. All right,
Okay,
everybody,
there
I'm
you
going to
go.
be talking
There you
about, you
go.
got me now?
Got you now.
All right, perfect. I'm going to be talking about denaturalization and also how safe you are with your current, with your green card, which is also called residency, which is also called LPR status. If you want to, you can go ahead and put questions as they come up in the chat. And if it's something that's relevant to what I'm talking about, I'll answer it then, or we'll answer them at the end. But you can go ahead and put any questions that come up in there. So to start talking about denaturalization, first, let's talk about what is naturalization. So to become a United States citizen, the two main things that people focus on are either birthright citizenship, or naturalization. There's certificates too, but just put that aside to the moment. So either you are born in the United States, which Trump has attacked, depending on who your parents are when you're born in the United States, or you go through the process of residency and then applying for citizenship through naturalization. So what is the Trump memo on naturalization? Just like in his first term, and this term, he's also going after naturalized citizens to try and get people removed from the United States or at least step down to residency or green card status. So the internal memo that was issued to the Department of Justice in June of this year makes denaturalization one of the top 5 priorities. And in that memo, it stated that they want to focus on naturalized US citizens who are either a threat to national security, who've engaged in torture, war crimes, or other human rights violations, who've been involved with criminal gangs or organizations, who have committed felonies, who have participated in human trafficking, sex offenses, or violent crimes. Ironic considering our president, right? Or who've engaged in various forms of financial fraud against the United States. That's what the memo says. But what we're going to talk about now are the actual bases on which someone can be denaturalized. So let's go to the next slide. The first reason would be an irregularity. So this would be something that's not your fault. It would be a problem that was in your process of becoming a resident or a citizen that they just didn't catch, USCIS is they, at the time that you applied. So for example, if somebody actually doesn't meet the physical presence requirement, but they just didn't catch it at the time that they issued you your citizenship, if there was a reason for them to go back in the file and they see, oh, you didn't actually have the time required to become a citizen, they can put you in denaturalization proceedings. It would step you back down to residency. And then once you do meet the physical requirements, you could apply again. Unfortunately, when USCIS makes these kind of mistakes, it doesn't mean that they have to just continue on with your citizenship. They are allowed to denaturalize you when they make these mistakes. And that can be a mistake that even happened in your residency process. A case that I dealt with before was a man who was petitioned by his spouse to come to the United States. And somehow, some way, once his petition was approved, he just got on a plane and came to the US. He never went through the consular process of having the interview in his home country and getting his passport stamped and then coming to the United States. He said he just went to the airport, bought a ticket, and came. Fine. He arrived in the United States and he was issued a green card. Then he applied for citizenship. He was given citizenship. It wasn't until years later, he's now divorced, he's now petitioning for a new spouse, that the irregularity came up. And they said, oh, actually, not only can you not petition for your new spouse, but we are going to have to denaturalize you because you didn't even become a resident lawfully. Now, in that case, we were able to fix it. He had a U.S. citizen child who was able to file a new petition for him. And so it was fine, but that's the first way that denaturalization can occur. The second is willful misrepresentation. This is pretty straightforward. So if you put any information in your application that is false, that can be considered a willful misrepresentation. That can include your employment history, that can include your travel history, but it has to be something that was deliberate. So if it was just a mistake and you can explain how it was a mistake, then you can go through the denaturalization process and explain that. And if it's accepted, then it won't be a problem. But the government does have to prove that it was a willful misrepresentation. And I think there's a couple of questions already. Let me see if I can go ahead and. Okay, no, that's not for me. All right. So the next one is going to be political or different, belonging to certain political parties like Communist Party or having any terrorist affiliation. Previously, this has applied to people who were associated with the Communist Party or with the Nazi Party. Today, we're seeing this being associated with people who are accused of being supporters of Hamas. So, a lot of people who would categorize themselves as being pro Palestine are actually being accused of being pro Hamas and are therefore being brought into proceedings for denaturalization on that basis. The next one is going to be return to home country. Oh, one more thing on political or terrorist affiliation. We're also seeing people being accused of being gang members under this category, having affiliation with either Tren de Aragua or the MS-13. Um, so that's being used in that way. The next one is return to home country. So, as you know, if you win asylum, what that means is that it's not safe for you to return to your home country. So, if you decide to return to your home country in the future, you are taking the risk that on return, that officer might make the decision that either your underlying asylum application was false or that because you no longer have any reason to fear return to your home country, that you should no longer have that basis for citizenship or residency. My very conservative advice to people is to visit neighboring countries. If you have family you want to see, to have them meet you there in a neighboring country, but not to go back to that home country. I'm sure that you've all heard through the grapevine, so and so went to their home country and nothing happened. Okay, but do you want to take that risk? And the last reason someone could be denaturalized is because of criminal activity. And I put polygamy here and aside because I am seeing myself a rise of the people who come to me for consultations who are being accused of polygamy, either because a prior divorce document is not being accepted as valid. And so they're saying, okay, you have a wife back in your home country and you have a wife in the US and you're committing polygamy. Or because the person truly did take a second wife back home, either with the knowledge, with the first wife's knowledge, or not with the first wife's knowledge. So you do have to be careful about that, leading to denaturalization. What do you do if you're asked to appear in immigration court for denaturalization? I would first start with requesting a FOIA. A FOIA is a Freedom of Information Act to get a copy of your entire immigration file. This way you can go through the file yourself, have an attorney go through the file with you to determine if there were any irregularities, determine exactly what information was provided to the officer, and what is the truth of the allegations being made against you. Because if you're asked to appear in immigration court, you're going to receive a notice to appear that has some allegations on it. So you want to be able to review what are the allegations being made against me and what is in my file that they think supports these allegations. I would hire an immigration attorney for this process. Sometimes, if you come into clinic, if you come into for a consultation, I will tell you there are some things that you can do on your own if you're short on cash. This is not one of those things. If you are being asked to come to court for denaturalization, you need legal representation. Unfortunately, it is not one of your rights to have an attorney provided for you in immigration proceedings. So one is not going to be provided for you. However, if it's criminal proceedings, then you are able to get an attorney appointed for you. The next thing, when you hire an attorney, read the contract before you sign it. I have also noticed when people come in for consultations and they already have an attorney, when I ask, what is the contract that you agreed to? What is the representation that you agreed to? I have had 0 out of 10 people be able to give me the answer to that question. You need to read your contract and know exactly what that attorney is doing for you and for what price. If there is no contract, then that is not your attorney. Okay, you need a contract that spells out exactly what service they're providing. And that contract should also tell you what is included and what's not included. Are they including coming to court with you? Are they including visits to the office for preparation before you go to court? Are they including filing various documents for you? Are they going to charge you extra for every phone call that you make or every email inquiry that you make? Are you going to be charged extra for change of address? You need to be very clear on what's included in the contract and what's not. Also, you need to attend court. I've had some situations where people are calling from out of the country because, oh, I got a notice to appear in court. I decided to just leave. You cannot do that. You need to attend court. You cannot voluntarily depart before you attend court, before you make some kind of arrangement with the government attorney that is accepted by the court. Otherwise, that will turn into a removal order. Do non-citizens have constitutional rights? Yes, I'm not going to go back through that. Skip this too. Okay, so now going on to green card. How can I apply for a green card? There's 3 basic categories that make you eligible for residency. The first one is going to be family-based. So those are obviously your family members filing a petition for you, spouse, siblings, parents. The next one is humanitarian. So this pathway is going to be filing for asylum, filing for VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act, which also applies to men. If you go onto the Nigerian Center YouTube page, we have an entire presentation on VAWA that was geared more towards men and men understanding the kinds of abuse that they may have suffered inside of a marriage. That they are not prone to discuss or maybe even be attuned to that it's abuse. You can find that on the Nigerian Center's YouTube page. Another one in that category is called cancellation or removal. So this is for people who've been in the United States for at least 10 years, and they have a US citizen or resident child or parent who is dependent upon them that would suffer an extreme hardship if they were required to leave the United States, and they have good moral character. The last category is employment-based applications. The one that I see the most at the Nigerian Center is people doing the self-petition national interest waiver. So those are the 3 basic categories. And you can apply for multiple bases at the same time. So even though you have an asylum application pending, you may also get married. And in the course of getting married to that US citizen or resident, you can obtain residency. And only once you have that card in hand, then you can withdraw your asylum application. Or you may be in a long waiting period because you have a family member who's filed a petition for you, but it's going to be a few years before it becomes ripe. You can submit a different application in the meantime while you're waiting. You're not stuck to just submitting one type of application for a green card. Am I safe with my green card? Unfortunately, I have to say maybe, because we are seeing people with green cards who are being detained and attempts to remove these people, specifically if they are accused of having any relationship with or support of Hamas or any criminal organizations or gangs. So things that you want to do to secure your safety with your green card is, number one, I would not travel outside of the United States for more than 6 months at a time. And if it's not necessary for you to be out that long, then even shorter. Okay. I also would not travel outside of the United States if you have any criminal charges in the past, even if it's been resolved. I would not currently travel with any pending criminal charges. That is my conservative advice. You could hear different advice from a different attorney. But what I have seen is that people are being declared inadmissible for simple charges that would not have even been flagged before on their return to the United States and their green card holders. Also, you have to remember that if you're in DC, it is very easy to think that marijuana is legal. But for you as an immigrant, it is not. It is not federally legal. So it's not okay for you to be in possession of marijuana. And then polygamy again, just be careful about this because if you are found to have two spouses, that could be an issue where your green card is um, um, jeopardized and you're placed in proceedings for you to be um, for your residency to be removed. I would even be concerned about multiple traffic infractions. If you have multiple driving without a license, multiple speeding tickets, multiple not having children properly restrained in a vehicle, start being more careful about those things, and use public transportation if you can, if you don't have a driver's license, because these traffic infractions can add up to a judge saying that you have a deliberate disregard for the laws of the United States. And they could lead you into situations where you have an interaction with law enforcement that has greater consequences. Um, all right, Viviana reviewed all of that, so I'm not going to do that. Now I'm going to turn to the questions that we have here, and well, if they are questions, and Viviana, some of these questions might also be for you. So if you want to jump in, feel free. Let's see here.
Really quickly, April, we're gonna go straight into our Q&A. Thank you. I know that it is almost 8 o'clock and some folks have stated that they have to drop off. This is still incredibly relevant, incredibly useful information. So if all of our panelists are still available, we will continue with the Q&A. For anyone else, we are going to make sure that you all have these resources and a recording of this video, so it will be available. So thank you all so much for your time. And April, with that, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Okay. What's your last point on political and terrorist affiliation? So one of the ways that people can be at risk for denaturalization is if they are accused of having some adverse political affiliation or a terrorist association. So if you have associations or if you're in places that put you in proximity with people who are in El Tren, Nicaragua, who are associated with the MS-13, who are pro-Hamas, you have to make some decisions about whether or not you want to continue those associations. And then I see that Benga has also put the link to the VAWA Know Your Rights presentation. We also did a presentation. The second one that he has linked is the asylum, credible fear, and domestic violence. In that one, I also talked about expedited removal, which Vivian Westbrook talked about as well. Must green card holders have their cards on them at all time? I would keep a copy of my green card on me at all times, as well as email a copy to myself. All of your important documents, you should have an email to yourself and also a copy to a trusted friend, so that if you are ever detained, you have someone who has your entire immigration history in case they need to take it to an attorney. Also, you should understand what your status is. You should be able to understand what your immigration history is and what your status is. For some younger people, this might be very uncomfortable because your parents have not talked to you about exactly what happened when you arrived in the United States. But you should have some understanding, because a very sad thing that happens frequently is that we have someone come in, they have a removal order, and they don't even know it. They don't understand it because their parents were actually ordered removed when they were 3, 4, 5 years old. And so they had no idea that this has been in existence over their head. They're just walking around and they're like, oh, I have my DACA, and they don't know. So you need to either review your own immigration records or have a real conversation with your parents about exactly what your status is and what your immigration history is. Okay, I think that's it. Are people with pending asylum applications now deportable? So if you get placed in expedited removal, which means that you've been in the United States for less than 2 years, then you are at risk for deportation. So, as Viviana mentioned, you want to carry proof on you, or at least emailed to you, that you have been oh, okay. Thank you, Viviana. You're legally required to carry your green card. Uh, okay. So make sure you have a copy to yourself in your email as well. Um, you can unfortunately be deported if you do not pass a credible fear interview. So the best way to prove that you are not properly placed in expedited removal is to have documents showing that you've been in the United States for at least 2 years. So this can be bills, phone bills, it can be medical records, it could be school records. Um, and then that way you're not up for being placed in expedited removal. If you have been in the United States for less than 2 years, then you could potentially face being removed if you don't pass a credible fear interview. Let's see. I had someone ask earlier whether or not, what was the question? Well, I've lost my train of thought. Julie, did you want to share something?
Hi, thank you. This is wonderful and great resources. I just wanted to give an update because I have had clients detained in DC recently, last week and this week. As you guys have mentioned, they are unmarked cars, some have Pennsylvania plates. They're not in uniform, they don't have a name. Uh, and this has happened to my clients and their relatives. The officers have no warrant, they have no order. It was not a traffic stop. They were getting in their cars to go to work. And I, as an attorney, have given clients that I have my G28 form, which we normally use only when we submit cases to the government, saying this person has a lawyer, so that they can carry it and have it to give to ICE if they get detained. Because you know, when you want to call your lawyer can't answer. So Monday, I had a client detained, her and her husband going to work, and she gave the G28 form to the ICE officer. And they said, this doesn't mean anything, this doesn't matter. And the officer tore it up. So it is an official document for the government, for immigration to know if someone has a lawyer. So it's only happened once, but it was shocking. And people need to know, and we need to let the community know. ICE are not lawyers. They don't know the law. They don't know what immigration rights the person they're detaining has. So people are getting detained. So a lot of this is so that you can try to avoid detention, you know your rights if you're getting stopped. But one thing that I've found important is that people need to know if you do get detained and you end up in ICE, you still have those rights. You still have the right to talk to a lawyer. You still have a right to be silent, to not sign documents that you have no clue what they mean. And in my experience and what clients have told me, ICE officers lie to them. Again, one of my clients was detained and they said, you have an order. And my client was very firm and she said, no, I don't. They're like, yeah, you have an order of deportation. See? And the ICE officer, I don't know if it was on a screen or what. And my client said, no, I do not have an order of deportation. That was my case getting dismissed. And so ICE doesn't even, well, either they're lying outright or they don't know how to or don't read these court orders. So thankfully, my client was very firm in her understanding of her case and that she didn't have a final order. And two more things. Notaries everywhere else in the world in all other countries are lawyers. They're more than a lawyer. You have to go to additional schooling to be a notary in any country outside of the United States. So all immigrants that are coming here hear about notaries and think that a notary can help them on their cases. And that's where we have a problem, and it was already addressed. You want to talk to an immigration lawyer, make sure you know who you're talking to. And a notary is not a lawyer in the US. They don't even need to have a college degree, I believe. And finally, what I'm finding is no matter all the rights people know, people are getting detained. A lot of my clients, they have no arrest. It was not a traffic stop. They have no convictions. We actually have cases pending for them. So what families need to know, if a loved one gets detained, if I'm counsel, I need immediately letters from the community, letters of moral support, good moral character. The employers have to be willing to send a letter, and those letters have to be signed because people don't sign letters anymore with so much technology. Photos of family members, school records of the children, and any medical records have to be available in the home. God forbid a parent gets detained, and there's not a lot of time to ask for those bonds if this person has no justified reason to be detained. And that's what I've been seeing in the past 2 weeks in DC.
So I think that really important thing is that people need to understand what their own status is and what their own case is about so that they can advocate for themselves. So that was a really good example of understanding your client. She understood, no, my case was dismissed. I don't have a removal order. And that's what everyone in here should be able to do about your own status, about your kid's status, about your spouse's status, is to understand what it is. One of the issues that I've seen come up over and over and over again is when people have withholding of removal or protection under the Convention Against Torture that is interpreted as a removal order by ICE. And in the news, it's written as a removal order. Because when you get the order from the judge, it says removal at the top because asylum is denied, but it grants at the bottom withholding of removal and CAT, and people don't understand what that means either. So look at your order. If you're someone who has withholding of removal or protection under CAT, look at your order from the judge's office, understand how to read it so that if somebody puts it in front of you, it doesn't confuse you and that you know what that means. The question I was trying to remember earlier that I forgot was someone asked me, is it safe now to apply for asylum? So the person is undocumented and they want to know, is it safe now to apply for asylum? And my response to that, and other attorneys may differ, is that it's better to have some process pending than it is to have nothing pending. There's this idea that if I just remain undocumented, they don't know about me, nothing will happen to me. The government knows that you're already here. There's no hiding. So my opinion is if you have a good basis for an asylum case, yes, you should still apply for that. You shouldn't shirk away from it because of what's going on right now. And let's see.
I think if we could return to that issue where the G28 form was torn up, I think we saw you had a hand up. And so there was a question of what was the result of that attempt when the ICE officer tore up that piece of paper and said this means nothing. Was that person detained even though she knew her rights and she was very firm? I think Julie, was that you?
Yeah, so this happened upon detention. So when they're on the street, her and her husband got in their car at work. This is in Northeast DC on Foot Street Northeast. And they got in their car to go to work, husband and wife. Turning the corner, there were like 7 ICE agents, and the officer tore it up. I don't know, I wasn't there, but my client told me they both got detained, even though mom said they had 2 children at home. They were still detained. And I actually don't do this normally in 20 years, but I went because I knew about the kids and I had even another client in DC detained. I went to Chantilly and I turned in new G28s that couldn't be signed by my client because they tore up the ones that were, but where the client would put a signature, I put in ICE detention and I gave them that. Now, there's still a problem with ICE because for the 2 males, mom got released, and I'm thinking it's only because of kids in the house. Um, the two other gentlemen, the father and another client, they have not yet been released. I just got A numbers. They're being told they have court. This all happened so recently. But they're not in the court system. So I don't know, I'm preparing to file for a bond once I know what court they're in. It doesn't even say where they're located in the ICE locator that, families know to go there to look there. It's not even in the ICE locator yet. So we're preparing a bond for when I know what court they're going to be in, I can turn it in. But the woman was still detained despite having my G28. And my purpose to my clients is I tell them, it's not going to prohibit you getting detained. It is a document to show ICE that should be turned into ICE because I do that via email. But hopefully, if it deters them from detaining the person or lets them know they have an attorney, which means they have a case pending, that's my purpose. But I know it won't prohibit them getting detained. I know that, and I let my clients know that. But it's kind of a safety measure. I think it also makes them feel better.
Heightened security. Thank you for that, Julia. April, I'm gonna turn it back over to you. We can continue for a few more minutes. I see that Michelle has asked, is there a central location where the status of someone in immigration process is listed? I think we've talked about that a couple times. Anyone on the panel, if you can speak to uh, where they're supposed to be listed and how families should be able to access that information. And then we have a couple hands in the audience after that.
Okay, so there's no public bank where you can find someone's immigration status. If you don't know your own immigration history or someone has a question, then they should request a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act, from USCIS to get information about their immigration history and current status. But there's no one public database that anyone can look at to find their immigration status. And see, Benga, I see your hand up. I don't know how I can tell from here if anybody else's hand is up.
I think Fire Nelson was ahead of me. You still have your
Okay.
question, Fire?
You've answered the question I had about the result of that encounter, which kind of bothers me now, to see that still wasn't a deterrent for the men. So, and they're not in the court system to know where they get moved to and so forth. So what happens to them? And is there other advocacy groups that can get involved?
These people who got detained got taken to Chantilly. That's normally the place. With regards to ICE lying, another client that was detained last week, they told the family member that same day the ICE officers called the wife and said, he has a hearing today at 601 4th Street Northwest. And I was furious when I found that out because I know that's a lie. When someone gets detained by ICE, it takes at least 24 hours before you know what's going to happen with them, where they're located, and what's going to be done. If they don't have an A number because they've been here legal for 5, 10, or 20 years, you have to wait to find out what's going to be their A number. So I knew that was a lie, but it was in DC. It was a Friday. I walked down to 601 4th Street Northeast, and it's an FBI building. And I talked to an officer at length. There's no ICE officers there. There's no holding of immigrants there, and there's no hearings there. And I went to District Court U.S. Marshal's office, and I went to Superior Court U.S. Marshal's office. No one knew about this gentleman because there was no warrant. In the U.S. Marshal's office, they were actually nice, and one guy said, I have the warrants for today, like for pickups today, and that man is not on our list. So it's a travesty. And you do, by 48 hours, maybe have a better idea. I still don't know if my clients are still in Chantilly. Maybe they are. But they should be sent to like Farmville ICE detention or Caroline ICE detention. It's up in the air until you find out, but they're held.
Okay. And my other question was, are there other advocacy groups that can intervene, being as though there's so much misinformation, and they could be getting hurt. Anything could be going on, and it's illegal. So we're still dealing with the overreach of their authority. I mean, there's a lot of advocacy groups that can step in. Is that permissible?
So, I think that, one thing I did want to say is that for DC, first of all, I think there's um, something, I don't know, some sort of agreement that they'll process people within 72 hours. And I know that is currently not being followed because they have so many people coming in, so it's even taking longer. So I just want to say that if you don't hear from someone, like they could still be in the very first step of things, and they don't get access to counsel during that step. um, I have friends who work at the Mika Center, so they're the ones who have given me this information. The Mika Center, are the ones. This is like Care Coalition back in the day. They changed their name last year, but they're the ones that do detention work in the DMV area, and they are experts at this. And so normally, a lot of times, my first contact when something happens regarding detention is to give someone like their contact information, their hotline. I will also say that we currently are working on well, no, it's been submitted. We are currently waiting to publish this document that's issue spotting in immigration detention for prison ministry. And, people of faith, a lot of people sometimes have issues getting in, getting access to these folks. But where we haven't been having issues is leveraging the church. They're coming in and they can see things that others may not be able to. So this is sort of a guide to help people do that. And so we have things about how do you enter, what kinds of things are you looking for, where do you report this? And so we have the Acacia Center for Justice, we have the Attention Watch Network, the ACLU, BAJI, Human Rights First, NILC, all the people who are doing litigation on these issues, on anything that's going on in the detention centers that are violations of rights. So.
Okay, Morgan, can I go next?
I was gonna say to Julie, to your point, sounds like a ploy for that wife. It sounded like a ploy to get her to that location. I don't know what her status was, but it sounds like that was a ploy, in my humble opinion. Sure, Binga, go ahead. I'm looking through the questions right now. Seems like we might be slowing down.
No, I do have a question.
Mhm.
My question to the attorneys, is what about those in lawful status that maybe green card holder, maybe April, since you touched on green card, they don't have any warrants, no criminal history, just this random checks and detention happening across DC. Um, are they also at risk of detention? And should they be detained? What options do they have?
We have seen green card holders being detained. And depending on the reason why they've been detained, the response is going to be different. It may be a situation where they actually go into a bond hearing. It may be a situation where they are released before they even go before an immigration judge. It depends on the reason. So the green card holders that we've seen being detained are that I spoke of earlier, the ones who are accused of being pro-Hamas. Um, the most notable case, the young man Mahmoud Khalil. He was detained while he was at the post office with his pregnant wife. Um, so, unfortunately, yes, there are situations where a green card holder with no criminal history and no irregularities are being detained.
I'm sorry, a follow-up question. So lawful non-citizens, even like student visas, I guess my point is this increased presence of ICE in DC and other places. Are they really targeting those who may have prior removal orders? Or are they randomly just detaining anyone? And, so, and if they are, not specifically green card, because there are several statuses, maybe TPS or student visas, but this person have no criminal records or immigration removal orders. So
So
did they still disappear too?
you're looking for like some kind of pattern
Mhm.
among who is being detained and who's not.
Yes.
So, so my first answer would be that there isn't one. My second answer would be the more brown you are, and the more they classify you as non-American, the more at risk you are.
That was my clothing right now.
So, so if you are, unfortunately, if you're add a hat to what you've got on right there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all.
So I think that's all the questions. Please be sure to visit the Nigerian Center's Instagram, YouTube, and provide us with some visual support. If you don't have any donations that you can offer on a recurring basis, the visual support is also very, very helpful. And we appreciate if you're able to do that.
Most certainly. I'm gonna go back through and actually put those links back in that I put in earlier, or on our Instagram page, on our Facebook page, on our Twitter page. If you could interact with our work, we know it is a very delicate time for a lot of people, a very tumultuous time, a very scary time for a lot of families. And as I said at the top of our event, when we first came on, we want as many people as possible to get this information. We're not gatekeeping. We're trying to reach as many people as possible. So in whatever capacity people can participate, if it's just finding out things online, watching the videos on YouTube, getting that information, we do virtual consultations for a reason. So please, to anyone who needs to hear this information, please make sure they get it. And then, of course, when you boost our pages, you know, that algorithm, that social media algorithm that I have yet to master, um, that makes us more visible. So again, that's another way to get that message out. Benga, I'm gonna turn it over to you if you have any final remarks on upcoming events.
Yes, I did. Do you see my screen with upcoming events?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to do this quickly. Thank you for your patience and time. Folks in Washington, D.C. metro area, we are holding a financial series with TD Bank starting September 16th through November 19th. Please stop by. We also have financial programs like taxes, micro loans, credit building loans that we offer to our community. We'll be providing information about these resources at this event. Morgan just talked about immigration. If you cannot afford to do a virtual consultation, we do have a defense fund that will waive the fees for. You all you have to do is ask us, and we'll provide you that information. We have opportunities to volunteer in what we're doing. We can be a member of our community partners. If you have any touch points to immigrant communities or any communities who you think can benefit from the information we're sharing today. If you're not following us on social media, our handles and our usernames are on the screen. Please do so today. I want to highlight, we have a YouTube page that is pretty robust, and we have a Know Your Rights playlist that has covered all the pathways to immigration in the United States. So we highly recommend that you also subscribe and follow us on YouTube. Becoming a recurring donor is the best way to support us financially at the Nigerian Center. If you cannot do that, any donation will go a long way to continue the important work that you do. Quickly, I want to highlight two other donations. We have a partnership with TD Bank. If you have a TD Bank account, just let the local branch know that you want them to donate on your behalf to TD Bank. And the program is TD Bank Affinity Program. They would ask you for our own affinity code, which is AJ486, and they will make a donation on your behalf. If you do not have an account and want to open a new account, in that process, you can also let them know you want them to donate on your behalf at no cost to you to the Nigerian Center. The second opportunity is at Walmart. If you shop Walmart, Online, you can also designate Nigerian Center to round up your donation, and they will make a donation on your behalf to the Nigerian Center. That said, I want to thank every single one. Shout out to our wonderful presenters, Nkechi, attorney Viviana, attorney April, and all the attorneys also that also came in. Thank you for standing with us to this very time. Organizations that came to get resources for your community, we appreciate that. Our supporters, thank you everyone for hanging out with us this late, because this information is critical. At that moment, we are all released into greatness. Enjoy the rest of the day. God bless you all.
God bless. Stay safe, everyone. All right. I don't know if anyone has any final questions. I am going to close it down. Have a good evening.